your weekly rugby chat. The World Cup is underway, so obviously we've got plenty to talk about, but our main focus will be the Springboks. You've obviously seen quite a lot of us this last week or so, and mainly talking about some betting aspects, but this time around we really get into the nitty gritty of the game itself. I've got Brendan and Brent joining me this evening. How are you guys, lads? Brendan, nice to see you again.
Thanks so much for the invite, guys. Look forward to chat.
Brent, we believe you stashing, hiding away there. You're on holiday, and clearly you don't want the people to know that you're doing the show this evening, eh?
Yeah, we're at friend's house in Port Elizabeth at the moment. I've come down here for water polo. My daughter's playing next week, and just popped upstairs to their study to do the show, and looking forward to it. Especially, I've seen some of Brendan's comments on Twitter, and very much looking forward to seeing some of the stats he can throw at us. And good to see the boys in the live chat. Joe wondering if we're going to be backtracking on Ireland. Well, I can tell you, Joe, I won't be backtracking on Ireland because I fancied Ireland all along. I'm still calling the England-Ireland final. But Chris also making the point perhaps that Ireland beat a weak Scottish team, so maybe no backtracking needed. But yeah, looking forward to the show, Couch.
No, definitely. I think we'll touch on Ireland and Scotland and all of them and try and analyze a little bit of where they're at the moment. I know Brendan's got a nice formula that he's working with that we'll probably see a little bit clearer later on in terms of exactly how strong everyone's performing. But I'm sure you can have a little bit of a opinion at this stage already. But firstly, guys, let's tackle that big topic. So what exactly went wrong for the Boks this past weekend? And does it spell real danger? Is it the end of the road, end of the challenge? Brendan, how do you see where did the wheels come off for Rassie and his game plan this weekend?
Yeah, look, a lot of this stuff will be obvious, and we're going to go into it. I just always see the Springboks as a post-Nokwe era and a pre-Nokwe era. And what I mean by that is that day at Ellis Park where Yongi Nokwe scored 4 tries. And it kind of also signaled the same day that we moved away from or moved back to a pragmatic approach where we, really like to grind out wins, and it's almost like we make it really hard for ourselves. And I think Saturday saw us going back to that kind of thing, keeping it tight, not really having any sense of adventure. And as a result, if you then fall behind and the ref gets 1 or 2 things wrong, then you usually end up losing. So I think for me, in the bigger picture, our pragmatism is the overriding thing that nails us. And if we don't get your kicks right then, and you do miss too many tackles, which are the basic tenets of the game, if you're going to play a pragmatic game plan and get those basics wrong, you're never going to win, especially not against New Zealand, who were on form.
Yes, I think that's actually very well said. People can really criticize the strategy or they can criticize the execution, but as you say, whether it's right or wrong, he has stuck to this strategy, and it's not necessarily, I don't believe, a erroneous one. But as you say, then he's got to be spot on in execution thereof. If you're going to use the box kick, you got to use it well. If you're going to go for really defending and using that specific defensive system, then you got to pull it off. As soon as you don't, that's when you come in for criticism. Brent, from your angle, I'm sure you're watching it feet up and a beer in hand. So I don't know how technical you got into that Bok game and whether you just swore at the ref the whole time. What were your thoughts there?
Yeah, I was very disappointed because I changed my Super Brew from New Zealand to the Springboks just before the start, and not thinking as well that it was actually quite an easy round, and that I was going to lose the full house points if the Boks were wrong as well. So it was a really bad. I was very disappointed in the game. At that point, I hadn't got too involved in the World Cup from a betting point of view. I did get involved on the Sunday with absolutely no luck, I can tell you. But I think at the end of the day, we didn't necessarily play the wrong game plan. We just didn't play it very well. The kicks were poor, the kick chases, if you look at, they kicked on us a lot, but their kick chasing was excellent, and they put us under pressure. So we just didn't have the right, at the end of the day, we just didn't have the right game plan there. And I think that's pretty much what it came down to. I don't think we're the sort of team that is going to be able to change our game plan during the World Cup. I mean, we know what our strengths are. We have to play to them. For me, we looked our best when the big rampaging forwards, and I include Kitsoff there, for Mullen, Peter Steffetoy, they made some hard yards, but we lacked the skills to then finishing them off up wide. And out wide's also probably an unfair criticism because our wingers never really got a chance show much worth. And when he did, Colby was superb. But for me, I don't think we've necessarily got that many options. I think we've got to carry on doing what we're doing. We just got to do it better.
Brent, it's actually it's interesting you went on to the kicking there, so I'd actually like to take a little bit of a chance here to just talk about the kicking specifically. You know, it's almost like a big bugbear for me is the first thing, and I'll watch with some mates and some older people as well. So, you know, the first thing they are is like, oh, Faf's going to kick again. Oh, look at him put his heel down. That means he's going to go for the kick. And, you know, it does get frustrating. And as soon as you see on social media, everyone's like, you know, get Yankees on. We can't do all this kicking and everything's so much better when Yankees is on the field and that kind of talk. And I just think, you know, to me, it's people who aren't in the know. You can understand that, you know, you get frustrated during the game and you think, listen, something's on out wide, let's give it a go. But to just think that willy-nilly passing it out wide is a strategy I mean, that doesn't exist in modern day rugby. And, you know, the weirdest thing about it, and I believe Brendan has got a little bit of stats on it that proves this point, is that New Zealand scored both their tries from kicks. So, you know, you can't just go and say, but listen, you know, don't kick the rugby ball. It was a brilliant box kick from Aaron Smith that they regathered on the first one, and then they doubled up by going for the kick pass to Sivo Reese as well. So, I mean, that was two kicks in the same move. The first 3 points they got when Faf threw a bad pass that just hit ground and they kicked through. And then the second try came off a kick that Pollard would catch 8 times out of 10, which he knocked on. And I think that's just that's just how modern day rugby works. The set defense is just too good. You got to catch them, you know, unawares, unset, and that means either turnover ball or kick retrieval ball. And that's when the defensive systems aren't on set. And I'm actually going to quickly, if you'll quickly bear with me, I'll share my screen and show you this brilliant clip that World Rugby had in terms of that try. I don't know if you guys can see okay.
Yes, it came out quite nice here. This was excellent, eh?
Brilliant. The 3D camera usage is just fantastic. And there comes that cross kick out to Sivo, and you know now your defense is you know chasing trying to catch up. We actually do a pretty decent job. I mean, there you can see Faf's use as the cover defender and Sia, but now it comes out, you know, as after 2 kicks, you've got a disorientated defensive system. Eben out your back trying to catch a Bowden Barrett, and that's not the kind of system you want.
Yeah, that was a top class try. But just quickly on that technology, Kach, I mean, it's really excellent to see that. And it's great to watch it. I'm sure the coaches probably take advantage of that afterwards as well. And Brendan, I imagine you must be quite interested in that type of technology.
I am, yes. It's so funny that it looks so game-like, and that brought me back after all the moaning about the ref now this week. You know, that I've once heard at one of these congresses, an EA Sports or an esports congress, where they said, you know, the referee in a lot of esports are programmed. It's after all a piece of software, and yet the crowd still go mental at refs for making mistakes. So seeing rugby kind of played in that way just brought home that kind of message. But just to get back to the kicking, first of all, we kicked 42% of all our possession, which is very low. It kind of correlates with how we used to play 2 years ago. We also didn't really kick a lot for no apparent reason, because kicking is proved to always, you know, you always kind of have a net positive result if you chase it properly. It doesn't even have to be that great a kick. New Zealand, in contrast, kicked 60% of their possession. And that just brings home that you can't really kick enough. It just all depends on how you kick. And we saw against Japan, the Boks, even with Faf de Klerk, pulled off a really good kicking performance, because we all know the ball is wet, because we all know it's humid. But the crucial difference is Faf in the Japanese game didn't have a lot of pressure around the ruck area. Whereas against New Zealand, that was always going to be different, and I've never quite rated him as a kicker. I don't think it's his natural game. It's a bit of a concern that I don't think we have a 9 at the World Cup who is a specialist kicker. So if this, again, is going to be the game plan, which is quite a pragmatic Northern Hemisphere style thing, we've got to have the skill sets to run that. And I know Rassie is not a guy who's going to panic over this, and they'll just get better at it as the World Cup goes on. But for me, it's a little bit late to have started this strategy if you don't really have the specialist nines to pull it off. I think that was a big issue.
No, I mean that's exactly my point of view. Is everyone's talking, and I would actually like to touch on Faf as the next question. There is that Rassie, I think, decided when he came back from Munster and was into this job that, listen, this was the strategy he was gonna use. He had 18 months as well, so I don't think he had a lot of time to really come up with brilliant attacking play and that kind of, it was almost cut your losses, decide on a strategy that you think you've got enough time to implement and get your key role players. And to me, that core of your Eben Etzebeth and Dwayne Vermeulen, Pieter Steff, Faf, Pollard, and then Willie, that's his core around which his game plan evolves. So everyone is saying that, okay, Pollard didn't have a good game, let's swap him out for Elton Jantjies. Faf didn't have a good game, Willie had a shocking game. It's not an interchangeable system, though, for him in terms of, yes, he can bring someone off of the bench, but his game style completely changes with that one. And that was often an issue in before the World Cup, in the run-up, is that he didn't give a lot of like-for-like kind of replacements a chance. He almost, as I said, cut his losses and just said, listen, this is my first choice, and I hope these guys can do a job from the bench, and maybe if one has to come in, we will be okay. But having to change a Pollard and a Willie or Faf and a Willie is just, that's never going to happen. That is his style. And as you yourself said, maybe Faf isn't ideally suited to box kicking, but his backup scrum halves aren't either. Jantjies is still new into the system. He's still new into his game. He's a snipey little scrum half who likes the break, and kicking isn't his strong suit. The same with a Reinach. I mean, he comes in off the back of being known as the running scrum half almost, who loves, taking that gaps, who loves to run. Obviously, playing some rugby in the Northern Hemisphere would have benefited his kicking game, but I don't think it's someone that he's going to be really excited about. Listen, let's give this guy an option. He can play the same type of game as Faf. To me, Faf is almost the most important, and some people say rightly or wrongly, he takes a lot of the calls instead of a Pollard, but that is just the thing that they've decided to go with, and that's the same. And I think I see Brent's even talked about bringing a Colby into 15 and that kind of thing. And again, you think that, okay, it's also an exciting attacking player, but Colby still isn't really a second 10 as opposed to Willie, who does play as that second receiver kind of, or actually first receiver option when he plays from the back. So it's difficult to just make a quick change before a quarterfinal or something like that. Brent, I don't know if you want to add something on that.
No, I think just a comment that Pierre made. I'm just asking Pierre in the live chat if he enjoyed the game, because he actually flew over, I think, from Zurich to Japan to watch the game. He was actually at the ground, and he's just saying it's too early to criticize the box. The ref made some mistakes. I think we must touch on the ref and indeed the officiating at the World Cup. We had a request from another Brent further up in the comments to do that, and I think it's worth touching on today. But too early for the box to panic. There were a few moments of brilliance, as Pierre said there, that put us away. A couple of mistakes. But overall, I mean, that first 20 minutes, I was thinking, gee whiz, this Bok team is looking really, really good. And full credit, I think not enough credit maybe has gone to New Zealand here. I mean, ultimately, what another professional performance by them, absorbing the pressure as only New Zealand can. And when their chances came, gee whiz, did they take them? And that's what you're going to get when you play New Zealand. And you're going to have to tighten up your game considerably if you think you're going to beat them. But overall, I don't think it's doom and gloom for the Boks. We're heading for a big quarterfinal with Ireland. My feelings on that. I do think that Ireland can beat the Boks there. I just think the Northern Hemisphere teams have got that much more discipline. They're prepared to take the ball through 26 phases. I'm not convinced the likes of the Boks are there. And for that reason, I'm still favouring the Northern Hemisphere sides. But overall, no need for the Boks to panic.
Listen, I must say that for 15 to 20 minutes, I actually thought, I didn't know what happened to this New Zealand team, because they knew exactly what was going to happen. They knew exactly what the Boks were going to throw at them in terms of that rush defense and the shift up defense. And they looked like for 15 or 20 minutes that they didn't know what they were going to do. They were throwing it with some desperate basketball touch on kind of passes, and I was really wondering, surely they would have come up with some kind of strategy, because they knew exactly what the Boks were going to do. And it was only a little bit later when the pressure almost was relieved a little bit that Mo'unga started to call the shots and he started to use. But I mean, clearly their strategy was to try and play behind the Boks a little bit. You saw those up and unders, like midfield up and unders as well, which he went, and Colby did fantastically well under. and then there was one dinky little chip over the top, and then obviously the kick passes. So clearly, their alternative to the rush defense was to use the boot. But everyone would say the All Blacks did fantastically well, and I'd probably like to hear about Brendan's analysis of who was the top team, but we get into that just a little bit later. But to me, I don't think the All Blacks were that fantastic. They were very good in that 10-minute stint, but for the majority of the game, they got ahead and then they just managed the game. But I don't think, coming back to 17-13 there as the Box did, and then that desperate tackle on Colby into the corner, basically from Moanga. I still think the All Blacks weren't all over the Box, and the Springboks can take plenty away from that game. And I don't think all the questions have already been answered in terms of the All Blacks. The one question I'd like to ask you two before we move off the Springboks is the Mapimpi argument. Do you guys believe that it is just, listen, this is a Ninabe Rassie setup and we got to live with it, it doesn't matter who's going to be on the left wing? Or do you think this is a case of Mapimpi just not quite understanding the system and not making the right reads at the right time, and perhaps thinking about an alternative of maybe an Nkosi on left wing or shifting Colby over? Brendan?
So I think this ties in with the Faf question. I watched Rassie and Ninabe at Munster as well. I think in that relationship, Ninabe's voice is always a little bit stronger, in the sense that if team selections are made, they favour the player who makes the better reads on defence over the guy who naturally would be the better attacker. That's essentially why Colby is playing. It's his defence that is so great. He just doesn't miss anything. His reads are incredible, and if he shoots up, he wouldn't miss the tackle. But then you look at Faf. I think they use Faf a lot as kind of the axe around our defence, this rush defence, this really putting pressure on the opposition. And funnily enough, this basketball style that New Zealand played, I saw Australia did a bit of that as well. I can't remember if it was France or someone else also did it, that no matter if the ball is a little bit loose and things get a bit scatty, they just keep doing it. And I think it's a very good way of negating this rush defence and this crazy Faf de Klerk type of little fox terrier type defense that we have. You just keep flinging the ball about. You shouldn't really be too structured, because he's going to shoot up, and then you have Mapimpi shoot up, and between two guys shooting up, there's always going to be space in the middle or space on the outside. So I think the Mapimpi choice is again based on him being the better reader on defense in Ninabe's mind. Maybe, that might have not have proved to be right in the big stage, but we never know what goes on when these guys do their training runs and the type of analysis they do. But I would think Mapimpi would be chosen over Nkosi because he would be the better defender. I just think that's the nature of their relationship.
Brent, Mapimpi or a change necessary there?
Yeah, I'm probably it's tough. I'm probably not one of the guys, and I do enjoy the technical analysis, which is why I enjoy listening to the guys who do it. I tend not to analyze it quite as technically. So I'm probably coming on it a little bit more as like almost I want to use the word layman or whatever. For me, something did look wrong with him. There's too many times he pops up there, and a couple of times I think we got away with it. So for me, there is an issue there that's got to be looked at. But ultimately, he's a good defender, a good tackler. And I'd probably try and find a way to keep him in the system. As I said in the live chat, what I would do is I would move Colby to 15, and I would bring Nkosi in on the wing. I do think that Nkosi deserves a starting lineup. But I mean, the other thing about the Box now, we've got now 3 games which we can use to work towards the quarterfinals. It's a big advantage over a team like England that effectively has 5 hard games in a row leading up to the World Cup final they make. And I think we've got time now to fiddle around, but I guess the one thing you've got to realize is it's a bit like when we kicked on Japan. Kicking on Japan is not the same as kicking on the All Blacks. And we've got to bear that in mind. What works against Namibia is not necessarily going to work, against one of the bigger teams like Ireland.
Okay, now I hear you on that one. Then, guys, you talked about England a little bit there. To me, England were a little bit disappointing. Obviously, they only needed to get the 4 tries, but only getting it in the 70th minute was there was a bit more of a scramble than I think they probably needed to. And maybe let's leave Ireland. I'd like to talk about Ireland maybe specifically. So England, Wales, and France. Just Brendan, maybe your opinion on those guys who stood out, who's got the most momentum there, I suppose.
Yeah, look, it's interesting. I just think the Fiji Australia game as well as the Tonga England game would have been, would always look different because England trade on their size and especially their size in the backs. And Tonga and possibly Fiji would be the only teams in the World Cup who's going to match them for size in the back. So, I could see they were flinging the ball around a bit and they went wide quite quickly. Australia did the same thing to Fiji, and Fiji tired quite quickly. I felt after 25 minutes, well, actually after the first half, I know Australia was still behind, but you could see some Fijians starting to walk about, and the Australians literally ran everything in the first half, obviously as a strategy to get these guys to tie, and knowing that they wouldn't have been in camp that long, or the fitness levels just cannot compare to guys who were playing Super Rugby and the Rugby Championship. But then the Tongans, funnily enough, stood up, and I think it's because Tulagi and these English guys were really just trying to front up and put down a marker against some really, really big men and got tackled extremely hard. So whereas a kind of a scatty team like Australia then pulled together at halftime and said, okay, now we start mauling, which is something you just don't associate Australia with. And now we get our scrum right and those kind of things, because that's how you beat these deconstructed teams, so to speak. England just tried to persist with what they were doing, and I think against a team like Tonga, it's the worst strategy you could follow. So I think for them, that was it. France, I was kind of impressed with. I think it was always going to be an emotional game between those two. We spoke about it the last time, but they were clinical. And then again, a good 10 like in Tamak just makes all the difference when games are really tight like that. I think when it mattered, he was a general. He got them in the right areas. They used their chances a little bit better than Argentina. And, Argentina just left it too late. But it was a great game, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a beauty. I think France played a patch of rugby there where it was just champagne. It's that beautiful. I suppose you can call it the beautiful game there where they've got backs and forwards interlinking, and that Penaud was running circles around guys. It really was, it was almost like watching Arsenal play football when they're at their best. It was poetry in motion. Sorry, Brent, I don't want to bring in a football one on the back of your football weekend.
Let's not talk about Watford v Man City, please, if you don't mind, Cass. But I think just first of all, if I could going through those teams that you discussed there, I think England, the guys in the live chat are saying, well, England were holding a lot back, and I look at this game two ways. As a punter, I walked into the trap. I thought England would be looking to put a massive score on Tonga, and clearly it wasn't the case. And when you really stand back and look at it, it was a foolish mistake for me to make, because ultimately they're going to do just what's necessary to get by the USA and to get by the Tonga, because they're going to have that. They do have that hard run in, and they've got to manage their resources effectively. So I don't think we can read anything into the fact that England didn't put Tonga away, for example, the way New Zealand put them away in the warm-ups. This was just such a different game. I do think England probably were, the problem is when you don't go out to put a team away, when you are holding something back, it's very difficult. You often hold a little bit too much back. And I think that kind of happened to England in a way. They never really impressed. But at the same time, as someone, as you know, who fancies England to win the tournament, I wasn't concerned by that performance at all. I think they're going to still comfortably get through the group. The France-Argentina game, well, I actually missed the first half. I was in the air when France are running. Wow, they must have done a brilliant first half. But they were very, very lucky to get that win ultimately against Argentina. There was certainly, we talk of officiating, and I saw the Argentinian coach saying they treated like a second-tier side, which in itself was an interesting comment, because let's face it, a ref shouldn't be reffing any differently for a second and a first tier. But what he was saying is they're not yet getting the respect from the refs, and I think that he makes a good point there. I think they were very unlucky, but the officiating on that game aside, the fact is that Argentina are going to go through now. France are going to go through, and Argentina are not. And that French team is well capable of causing an upset or two. And if you look at what they did in 2011, it's not impossible they could do that again. I don't think they will, but they're going to be a very, very difficult team to beat. Wales, just to touch on them, I thought, I was watching in a coffee shop here in Port Elizabeth this morning. I mean, they blew Georgia away earlier. probably had the advantage of a few calls as well. But ultimately, exactly the same thing. And you've touched on the theory, Couch. Go out there or get the job done, and then sort of ease off on the gas. There's the one. And the other theory is that they'll pull away in the second half, and it's difficult for us to read what's going to happen. But Wales can also be quite happy with their performance today. They weren't troubled, and it was workmanlike. And I think us as fans, we sometimes expect that bit more. But we often forget about the bigger picture. But the teams themselves haven't forgotten about the bigger picture, and they will only do what is necessary. As much as we all want to see a team run riot and score 80 points, this doesn't look like the sort of World Cup where that's going to happen.
No, definitely. I think, as you rightly say, England didn't need to hit fifth gear there, and probably fourth gear, and Wales themselves, they got the job done in the first half and immediately brought on some subs. But I still think there was a little bit of a patch there where they just passed it out the back and just took it up and didn't really have a plan, which I think is to be a little bit of a concern. As I say, France showed in that 40 minutes when they're on, they can beat anyone, and in that second patch they showed they can lose against anyone, as they almost did. But the big one that I'd like to, and then Australia, Fiji. I must say I was surprised of how physical the Fijians were. I mean, obviously we know they're big lads, but they really dominated Australia in that first half. And what was surprising was guys like Lealifano and White looked a little bit shell-shocked against these big guys, really playing in their faces. And to me, that was actually a bit of a concern for Australia long term, not just because of the game, but having a Lealifano being dominated like that, and he looked off his game. And let's be honest, Fiji are big, but it's not going to be your only physical challenge. So that was a bit of a concern. And when they made some changes, it might have been coincidence that it went a bit better. But then your Korobetis finally got into the game, and Karevi and that kind of thing, and they got on the front foot. And it was actually a little bit of a 50-50 where you could say, why did they play so much with the ball in the first half? But then again, they did have the benefit in the second half of the Fijians being out on their feet. But, that's a bit of the one and more of the other. So it was still an impressive victory in the end for Australia. But as I said, that one. And then just maybe a quick one that I want to touch on, and then we'll lead into the refereeing is on that Hodge. Did you guys see the Hodge incident? And in general, do you think that we would have seen a little bit more sanctions and a few more red card kind of looks and more incidents of high tackles and that kind of thing at this stage? Or, do you think the players are already adapting, or are the refs and the commissioners not quite as strict at this stage? Brendan?
I think what I like about the system, and I know Checo had a big moan over Fiji referring this, saying it's not in the spirit of the game. What I find this useful is just after the game, Ross Tucker, one of the guys, Dr. Ross Tucker, who wrote the step-by-step guidelines of these new sanctions, argued that it would have been a straight red. And then today, Dave Wessels, who now coaches the Rebels, showed a very good evidence of there being arms involved, and that the initial hit was not on the neck or the head area. So, in an era of technology, I prefer, I think that they're saying Morgan Turanui, funnily, Wallaby said it was a straight yellow card, but nothing else, because there was no head or neck action. I think that is something that the refs might have maybe just looked at it in a bit more detail during the game. They didn't really refer it during the game at all. But the fact that you can go afterwards and have a look at these things at a time when you're not emotional about it, I think is a good system moving forward. So in a World Cup, losing, your starting winger for even one game, it can get quite messy if your next opponent is a strong one. So I think people just need to give it a bit of time. It's a very difficult thing to administer, but referring it and having a look at it during the week and then making a call on that is maybe the best way of going about this. Ditto the Reed incident on Peter Steff, which I think should just be referred, and that's that.
Brendan, the only thing that I think is quite interesting about this one, which struck me, and I actually sent a message to Stefan de Blanche in that aspect, was that they had the case of Fiji referring it, and someone actually saying that, but if they were Fiji, they shouldn't have done that, because then Australia lose a more key player for them, and they actually want Australia now to beat Wales so that they can have a chance of beating Wales. So it is actually, in that way, kind of strange where the team that's already lost against that side now has to go and lodge an appeal or not lodge an appeal. And I thought, that to me doesn't make sense. If your game is gone, why are you going to worry about whether a guy gets a sanction because he hit you high or not, when it's only your, other pool members that are going to have a benefit from it and not you. So to me, that was strange. But then I was told, and I actually read the whole setup, that there is a citing commissioner who has to actually look at it regardless of whether a team just has the option within 12 hours to lodge an appeal, but the commissioner has to look at incidents which he then refers, regardless of a team nominating it. But to me, it was just a bit strange that the team can lodge it. But I'll get into that. The other thing is, one suggestion from someone was that if an incident happens in the first half, that they should be looking at it during half time and then applying the sanction in the second half. Almost like you'd have in Formula One these days. You've got like a sanction where the race commissioners kind of look at it, the stewards for a lap or two, and then they decide on a penalty. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it would have to be totally, sorry, Brent. It'll just have to be totally transparent. You can't. You'll have to video film that kind of process. Otherwise, the fans would just never trust it. It's my view.
Yeah, personally, I'm not for it as well, because ultimately, what's the difference to me between the first half and the second half? It's a little bit like I'm a little bit against the whole TMO thing, that you can only look at the infringement if you're going to look at it. It's got to be in the last two phases or whatever. If there's a massive forward pass and it eventually leads to a penalty, the team are going to score 3 points. If it gets to a try, it's going to come back and be disallowed. That doesn't make sense for me. And here as well, you'd have a situation where you'd have things looked at halftime, which could potentially penalise sides in the second half of the game. But what about something that happens in the last 10 minutes? There's going to be no impact for the side then. So it's not that it's a bad idea, but I just don't think it's necessarily a practical one, and I don't think it would necessarily achieve what we're looking for it to achieve.
Yeah, to me, the big thing was, I was more towards Brendan, is I think, the crowd wouldn't really understand it either. Now, all of a sudden, the guys come out with 14 guys instead of the 15, and now you got to try and explain to them what happened. So to me, that's an issue. But I do understand the idea of trying to, give Fiji in that case the benefit on the day, where now it's something that happens in the boardroom, and they get absolutely no benefit. And as I said in this example, it's almost like they actually get a further disadvantage. I mean, imagine this was Karevi or someone doing it who's key to their game, or Genia or someone like that, and all of a sudden they're out. So it was just a strange scenario. But talking about strange things, guys, let's. I think Brendan has got a pretty strong view on this. We've had a lot of comments. The hot topic of the week. We've left it for 30 minutes into the conversation, is the refereeing. Brent, I'm going to start you off on this one. Listen, probably the only punt me and you have gotten right this whole World Cup is that we knew there'd be lots of talking about refereeing decisions. So what's your take on it? Is this a big issue? Is it just normal human error? Listen, it's always going to happen, or are the referees just not up to scratch, or the law is not up to scratch? What's going on?
Yeah, it's a tough one, Couch. I mean, no ref. I don't believe there's any ref that goes out of their way to blow a team out of it or whatever. But you do get hometown decisions in any sport, and you do get refs that make consistently wrong decisions. I must say, if I had to look at Garces on Saturday, I did think he had a poor game. At halftime, I didn't. I thought he was doing okay, and in the second half, I just felt he missed a lot. But at the end of the day, I do think rugby reffing is such that it's almost impossible to get. You're never going to get the perfect ref. There's always going to be someone criticizing the ref. The laws are a little bit they're grey in patches. My personal view, and I don't always agree with him on everything, but I almost want to stick to the oracles, what he does here. He tries to ignore the officiating. It's really, really difficult when it affects you in terms of winning or losing a match or whatever. But I just think it's so tough. There's so many angles. There's so many things happening off the ball. And, could we really be sitting with all of these? Can they all really be bad refs when compared to sort of refs gone by? I just think that there's so many more camera angles. There's so much analysis after the game by guys that, in the old days, you might have the coaches and that analyze the game. Now you've got guys on Twitter analyzing the game and doing a damn good job of it. But I just think been a ref in the Rugby World Cup or in virtually any sport, it's a bit of a no-win situation for me. But I don't know what the solution is. I think there is going to be some big controversy from the quarterfinals onwards, and it wouldn't surprise me if the finals decided in controversial fashion as well.
Brendan?
Yeah, I think the funny element, I used to get so sad when my team lost. I'm a Cheetah fan, so I experienced more hurt. I'm also an Arsenal fan, so I know deep pain when it comes to sport. And luckily, if you get to analyze it and you look at the numbers, like the Springboks, for example, I thought with 50 minutes into the game, so 30 to go, I could already see on the data that they're just not having a very good game. And this was long before the refereeing indiscretions happened. So, Dwayne stealing the ball, I also at the time thought, geez, the refs are being very lenient towards the ball carriers at this stage. When South Africa were carrying in the first half, I already thought, geez, he's not giving New Zealand a lot of leeway to nick the ball. But then again, I prefer the attacking team getting that advantage. That's how we see games flowing, and you have to admit the games in the World Cup has really had a great flow to it. We haven't seen that many scrum penalties. We haven't seen every maul suddenly being blown up. We've seen refs quite hard on saying use it, and trying to get the game going. So from that point of view, I can't be too critical of the ref in the South Africa game, because again, my feeling is just you get a certain amount of opportunities in a game. Both teams usually get roughly the same in the South Africa game. New Zealand got 45, we got 49. And in the opponent's area, so in their half, we got 20 opportunities and they got 15. So, regardless of what a ref does, the Dwayne Vermeulen steal was in our own half, so you can argue that it's fairly inconsequential. They would argue Peter Steffel from an offside position, and 2 phases later, he scored the same try. There's just always these stories. After the Springbok Wallaby game in Johannesburg this year, I happened to be in Australia at that stage, and a few refereeing decisions went against the Wallabies. But, again, luckily at that stage, I could just sit and look and say, look, the Boks were just too clinical in rounding off their opportunities, whereas the Wallabies weren't. So the refereeing, the nature of the human being standing in the middle, having to adjudicate on something and sometimes getting it wrong, should not hamper you to the extent where you lose the game. It just should never. And if you can kind of learn to tell yourself that after your team loses, it starts getting easier. So that would be my advice.
No, I must say I have to agree on that summation. Basically, at the end is that they are human, and especially the TV camera as well has got a specific angle or specific thing that he's seeing, and the referee he's got a personal view when he's there. You could be seeing the holding on and you seeing the guy not rolling away, or vice versa. I mean, I'm always thinking at almost any tackle and ruck situation, there's basically 2 penalties that can happen. It's just a case of which way he's going to go. And what I like about Brendan saying is that it's almost nice to see from the start that, listen, okay, he's giving a guy a little bit more time to hold onto the ball almost. He's just not going to realize it immediately and then remain that way. And that throughout the game, listen, he is going to give you that little bit more leeway. So adapt to it. Then it's up to a good team to know that, listen, okay, I've got that extra second. I'm going to hold on to it because this is the way he's playing the game. And that's where I think some management comes in. And the same with a captain, is managing them. If you say that, listen, they're always screwing around in the scrum, then the captain should be in his ear saying that, listen, we feel we have the dominance there. Can you just please have a look at the angle and that kind of thing? So still, I think there's some responsibility on the team as well to manage that situation, i.e. how he's playing it and how you need to adapt to it. But as Ben said, and we said now the stats, but we hope we don't get into a final where it becomes that it's really almost a 50-50 kind of game, and you get that one deciding factor in 5 minutes to go. That's a penalty or a yellow card. It's almost like a Kwacha and 2 years ago that got the red card, which was a fair call. But let's say it was a controversial call where he gets red carded, and the whole final is basically decided on that one moment. So that is, I think, the big concern around there. And I mean, let's be honest, even if you depend, it doesn't even matter which fan you are. If you're the World Rugby, for the good of the game, you don't want that to be the big talking point happening, anywhere, social media or otherwise. I don't know, guys. Anything else on the reffing, or can we go on to Ireland? The last point is I'd like to speak about how good Ireland were, or whether it was really bad Scotland, or whether we should be saying that Ireland are serious runners now. Brent, you've obviously we know you like anyone from the Northern Hemisphere. Do you think the Irish might be edging it as probably the best candidates?
Yeah, I think Ireland are runners, but then again, I thought that Ireland are runners all along. I was impressed with them against Scotland. I've seen the comments that Scotland are a weak Scottish side. I can't really argue with that either. So we can't read too much into this Irish performance. But I think Ireland are they play a clever game. They're patient. They play, and there's no doubt in my mind that Joe Schmidt will have them building up to a peak come sort of quarterfinals, semi-finals time. I think they're going to be. I think a game against the Boks will be an absolute massive match in the quarterfinals. I think it'll be like a total of 25, 30 points in the game. It's going to be decided by a single penalty. But I do think Ireland have what it takes to go all the way in this World Cup. I think they do. And I'm interested to hear what Brendan's got to say about the Irish, because I know he's got a good old soft spot for them as well. But I think Ireland did what's required of them. At the end of the day, that was their game that would sort of see them top the group. We may not see every performance being as good, but to beat Scotland in the manner that they did is impressive, let's face it. So, yeah, I think Ireland, they've shown me enough to suggest that they can go all the way to the final.
Brendan, I think last time you mentioned, apart from the Cheetahs, the Irish are also up there as one of your teams, and I think you said the Wallabies as well. But we'll ignore that one. Let's talk on Ireland here.
Yeah, look, I've dressed appropriately. I don't know if you guys can see. I have the gear on, so I'm all ready. No, I think Ireland, for me, a really exciting Springbok team for me was the 2007 one, because Jake White had everything planned so well. He bought the template from Clive Woodward. He brought in Eddie Jones, who's had World Cup experience, and just meticulously planning everything. And at this stage, I think how the Irish played against Scotland, you could see they really focused on their line out, because against England there was a shambles, and against Wales in the second half it was already a lot better. So they'd want to get that right. You could see their scrum was impeccable. It's just the cleanest of clean set pieces. So that's, again, for me, very Springboks 2007. Solid line out, can't fault Matt Field and Buckies. Great scrum with Austin, a lot of experience with John Smith. Kickers who can kick. And you have this pragmatic game plan through Conor Murray that you have also the skill set to pull off. And then what's exciting about them is they now have Luke McGrath and Jack Carty coming on and, really closing out the game, but doing so with a bit of flamboyance. They're not just sitting back. You can see they're not just second in command. And then we have Joey Carberry coming back as well. So, yes, Ireland are looking good. But Wales, funnily enough, one of the stats that showed up today, we measure at the moment the ability of a team to move from the opposition's 50 meter to the opposition 22. So this is kind of the best, for me, the best indicator of how good you attack. Because a lot of teams don't kick in that area. They keep ball in hand and they're trying to force their way into the opposition 22. Now, Georgia's defense, it cracked at times and there were gaping holes, but for the most part, it wasn't, it's not like it was just that porous. I mean, the second half at some stage, I think Georgia led the second half 7-0 for something like 25 minutes. So they were not all that bad. But Wales still managed to move from that zone to the other zone 60% of the time, which was the highest of all the teams, and quite dramatically so. So Wales also have big guns, but what I like about them, which I rate them over England, would be they have a bit of rugby intel. There's a lot of clever ballers, these footballers in their team, and just the way that George North try that was created out of nothing by the scrum half dancing. They're just an exciting team. But to go back, I'll show you guys the Springboks' ability to move from New Zealand 50 to their 22 was 21%, and Wales was 60%. That gives you kind of an idea. And then on the converse, New Zealand's into ours was also only 28%. So great defense by both teams. And I don't want to come back to the box the whole time, but if you think of how poorly we played and how good everything looks for New Zealand, the 23-13 score is not that bad, and I think we underestimate the amount of pressure the Springbok defence still exerts. And I just don't know how the Irish will play that. But then again, the Irish play so tight, so up close in the first quarters. They're going to be pounding Pollard if he's not injured at that stage. If it's going to be Yankees, I fear for the worst. So they're really going to come very hard at that inside channel, which a lot of teams don't play like at the moment. Again, you think back to the box of 2007, who used that heavy artillery Rocky's style, and they do it well. So that for me is going to be the interesting thing. Just lastly, sorry, I know I'm rambling. Italy, based on data, had an extremely good game. So if I were Group B, I'd just maybe glance over. We all think, yeah, they played against Namibia. Namibia is crappy. I think Namibia had one of the better games I've seen a minnow team play in a long time. They had no problems at set piece. They got their line out. They got their scrums. They made their tackles. They took their opportunities. In fact, the rate that Namibia took their opportunities were better than the Springboks against a much stronger team kind of on the ladder. So guys, look out for Italy. Connor, what's his surname, O'Shea has been planning for the box. He's targeted that game. And if a team's set pieces are good, they can compete. So I'm just saying, let's not talk about Ireland too quickly. We got a big game to play against Italy.
I must say that 2007 analogy or comparison, I think, is a very good one, because there's also a few guys almost in that Irish setup that people think are a little bit too long in the tooth. There's almost that argument of, are they past their prime, and that was quite a lot of the discussion, about that Springbok team as well, the whole, experience versus youth, and whether they've come to the end, the experience and expiry date almost argument. And at the end, obviously, we know the experience won over. And I was one of those who felt that the Irish probably 12 months ago were in their prime and might have missed the window. But I mean, seeing them run out there, and I was actually just before the start of the tournament, I felt they'd gone out to a decent amount of value in the betting, where everyone knows their role. And as you said, that set piece is great. The lineouts hopefully now is sorted, but their scrum is it's fantastic. And they still don't really give anything up, with a Tad Furlong still, able to run around and still has some skills and that kind of thing. So that to me is good. And obviously you've got the Sexton and Conor Murray, and I think a lot of people thought that, okay, but if their form has gone, they're a bit buggered. But I think they're decent enough still to be able to pull it through. And again, as you said, Brendan, is they've got a pragmatic approach. It's a lot like a Rassie kind of style. They know what they want to do. They know their limitations almost, but what they do, it's almost like a cricketer who's put a few shots away, but those shots that they do have, they do really, really well. So, to me, and the other thing is they play almost like finals type of rugby as a default setting. So it is going to be a really tough hurdle to beat, I think, for any team to beat Ireland. So to me, they are real runners, and I think they're very impressive. And lastly, I saw a comment there. Do you think Larmer or Carney as your first choice 15, Brendan?
Well, again, on the template, Carney is Percy Montgomery, so it's just that solidity that we've seen how many times in the really, really big games. Himself and Conor Murray and these guys are the guys who stand up, and that's just that experience in the big games they've been involved in. So no, in a World Cup, look, I'm a big Larmer fan. I think Colby is outshining him at the moment, but I think Larmer has a huge future ahead of him, and the way he fielded high balls, you can see he's something for the next World Cup. But for now, in this World Cup, based on the 2007 one, Carney is the man.
Okay, listen, just the last thing I want to say is the other thing apart from the kicking is when people talk about small guys and big guys. I don't want to go into a long discussion on that, but I just say that you can't have a back three full of Robinsons and Colbys, but at the same time, it's not necessary to throw a Colby away just because of his style. So to me, it's irrelevant, all these people talking about it. I think anything in rugby is about balance. So it's great having a Colby, but even if I could, I wouldn't have three Colbys, because to me it would just the system wouldn't work there. It's still nice having a Nkosi or a bigger guy or George North in that setup to try and make sure you've got a balance. Brent, anything final for you for tonight?
No, I don't think so. I'm interested to see the guys chatting there about whether Colby's too small for fullback. I mean, I must say, I was always one of the guys under the impression that he might be too small, but the way he played on Saturday, I think that guy could play virtually anywhere. Honestly, I was so impressed with him. And I don't think he can do. I mean, I'm not impressed with Philippe Leroux at the moment in fullback, and I don't think there'll be any harm in trying Colby as a bit of an experiment at fullback. I guess other than that, just to say, first round of the World Cup is over. I think we must keep an eye out now. Things like team selection and that are going to be more and more important as teams target certain games. And I was just interested to hear what Brendan said about Italy there, because I think all of us have kind of written Italy off. And I mean, let's not forget we lost to them a few years ago in Italy. But the point he made, which I hadn't really considered, is Italy will be targeting us. There's no doubt that when they looked at the fixture list, they have to decide, do they target us or do they target the All Blacks? And they'll be targeting the Boks. And that is going to be a tough game. I think we will be too strong for them, but I think it's a good point that we shouldn't take anything for granted against them.
Okay, Brent, on that note, thanks for joining us, and really, really don't worry about Italy. Brendan, anything final from you for the evening?
Yeah, I just think, we're playing Namibia next. I think we've been in Japan too long. I thought about it the other day while cutting biltong, funnily enough. We said it's so great. We're in Japan first. We get to catch the vibes. But the World Cup is just such a mental marathon. And for me, it almost like this game took too long to arrive. There was too much hype in your mind, and you're just never getting there to play. And now we're going through this difficult phase of playing smaller countries. South Africa playing Namibia, and then having a 2-week turnaround. I think it's really hard for coaches to manage the situation, because how do you keep the guys switched on? Now, luckily for the Springboks, they had a big loss, so they're going to be focused, but will they still be focused by the time they hit Italy after they've now had two easier games? So it's just such an exciting competition from that point of view, to see how they keep themselves mentally fresh and which teams are going to slip up. Because I'm telling you, Italy is going to cause an upset, and Fiji is going to cause an upset somewhere along the line. Someone's going to slip, and a bonus point's going to be dropped, and there's going to be fun to be had. So yeah, I think also the kind of minnow games that's coming in this week is exciting. It's like Formula One. It's like number 6 chasing number 7, and just to see who shapes up there, because I really, really think Namibia played extremely well. They have enough firepower to get things done. So yeah, full on excitement. Can't wait.
Yeah, their game against Canada is going to be an exciting one. I must say, I was very impressed with how Namibia played in terms of, I mean, they've re-showed that try, and it was a brilliant move, the first one. And that last try was just a thing of beauty. It absolutely cut my handicap call into shreds in 2 minutes to play. So I was heartbroken, but at the same time, I sat there with a smile on my face. So it was a tough one, but it was brilliant. And as you say, there's some pretty cool games there between those guys that you don't often see play each other. So it's nice to see them have a go. And then obviously the coming weekend, there's also still the big one between Wales and Australia. So that's also going to be obviously a cracker for a pool decider. Guys, thanks so much for joining me, and I'm sure we'll have a chat again soon.
And just a quick one. What time are you planning to do the daily chats in the week? At 9? Are we going to go back to the 9 o'clock? Stick to the 2:30?
I think we'll probably settle back to the 9 o'clock, unless we do one tomorrow on the South African holiday at 3, because everyone's at home. So that's up for discussion. But otherwise, during the week, we'll usually do it still at 9 during the weeks and 3 during the weekends.
Excellent. We'll look forward to it. And just a reminder to guys to hit the subscribe button if they haven't done yet. And Brendan, good chatting with you as always. Always love that insight.
Cheers, Brendan. Thanks for the invite. Thanks, Coach. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.
Cheers. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.